Hey, we got another great hour-packed show today, and our first expert is attorney. Listen, I said attorney Michael Miller. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Steve. How are you? Glad
Good.
to be back.
Listen, this is like, it's a sad topic, but it's like one of my favorite topics because I have learned so much about this, not personally, but other shows we do around the country. So let's start off. Tell everybody about your practice.
So I'm an attorney and a CPA. Been practicing for about 30 years, and I focus on tax law, tax resolution, generally individuals, but also businesses. And, like I tell people sometimes, I'm sort of an ER doctor for people in a tax crisis. So I get involved and I look at the emergency situation first, which is usually somebody's getting their bank account levied or their wages garnished. So I get that stopped immediately, and then I move on to more long-term resolution of either getting a one-time settlement or offering, a installment agreement, something like that. And then I, counsel the client as to how to avoid this in the future. And so that's generally how the representation goes.
Well, I wanted to make sure because, you read these stories like, hey, I can get someone pennies on the dollar. You get stuff that, I don't know, it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't pass the test. And from you and I talking over the last two shows, I really have a lot of faith in you. And I think that's important because this has got to be a major burden on someone's shoulders when they owe the IRS money.
It is. A lot of times it's more than a mortgage. So a lot of times it's the biggest debt the person's ever going to have in their lifetime because it's obviously larger than a car purchase, and most of the time it's larger than a mortgage, a home purchase, which is usually your biggest purchase in your lifetime. Sometimes it's over 100 grand, 200 grand. You'd be amazed how the average person can run up such a debt. But when you add penalties and interest
right,
and other things to it, it adds up.
And it's scary because, some people go to prison over this.
Can be, it turns into criminal. But even if it's just civil, which is what most of the IRS is, it can ruin your life. And they have 10 years to collect, and they don't have to get a court order to take your assets. Like most people have to sue you in a court of law and get a judgment, win the case, get a judgment, and then they have to jump through further legal hoops to take the money from you.
They're very good
such as a writ
do.
of garnishment, and then send it to the bank and so forth. The IRS, on the other hand, simply has to send you one letter to let you know that if they're about to levy you, you have a right to a hearing. Within 30 days, you have to ask for the hearing. And if you do not elect that hearing, then they have the ability to simply, take your money right out of your bank account or garnish your wages. And they can take basically everything you make except maybe a couple $100 if you get paid every other Friday. So it's surprising how much they can take. And of course, with your bank account, they can take it all. They can take the lesser of whatever's in the account or what you owe the IRS. Normally, what's in the account is less than what you owe,
right.
So they're going to take the whole thing.
Wow.
The bank will hold it for 21 days and see if there's a resolution. But after that 21 days, the money goes to the IRS. And during the 21 days, the money's frozen. So it's essentially as if it's gone from the account.
Exactly.
Because it's not available for checks, and your checks are bouncing. You got all these non-sufficient funds fees. It's a nightmare. So the key is to not let it get that far so that they have to resort to that type of collection activity. You want to take care of it early, get into an installment agreement, or possibly offering compromise settlement or some other resolution before it gets that far down the road.
I tell people, do not try to do this yourself. Seriously, I'm telling you, it's worth to have someone like Michael, because once they sign with you, they don't have to talk to the IRS anymore.
That's true. Once we get a power of attorney signed up, they never have to speak with the IRS. They don't have to meet with the IRS. So that right there, they get some peace of mind right there. And, they don't make any mistakes in terms of what they say or what they do. And
that's very important.
Not only that is important, but it's not only that, they may not have known what all is available to them and how to go about doing it. And so they reach some kind of resolution, and they have to live with it for 5 of the next 10 years. And it may not be the best, but they have to live with it because they didn't know any better, and they didn't get somebody that, does this every day to help them.
And you could give them, without realizing, you can give them a roadmap how they can get everything they want to take from you.
Absolutely.
Without knowing.
Absolutely. And they will take advantage. Sometimes the revenue officer will say, we need $5,000 or $10,000 down in order to work with you, which is not really the case. They can't really do that. Everybody's pretty much entitled to an installment agreement. It's based on, most of the time, it's based on what you can afford to pay every month. So you have to give them a financial, which sort of does give them that roadmap to your assets. But, there are ways to do it without giving a financial statement.
But if they hire
me, or
they don't even have to worry about it.
And they might not know what the options are. In other words, like I said, there is a way to get a resolution with the IRS without giving them any of your bank account information or any of that. And the reason you might not want to do that is, you've given them a roadmap. So if you miss a payment 3 years from now or something happens
Right.
and your installment agreement gets defaulted, then they know right where your assets are to levy. So, and a lot of people just don't want to, provide that kind of information, and they don't want to take the time to sit down and do it. It's very tedious and time consuming. So there are ways to do it without providing the financial information. So that's another thing I bring to the
So
table.
what's the first thing you get when the IRS is knocking on the door? They don't knock on the door, but what's the first thing? You get a letter?
You get a lot of letters from the IRS. That's why these scam calls, that's pretty much a scam, because that's not the way the IRS operates. They don't call you and say you owe money and give us the money now. That's not how they operate. So that's really your first sign that these calls, these scams that are going around, are in fact scams.
Or get an email from them.
Yes, they don't send emails at all because of security concerns.
Okay.
So they operate, believe it or not, faxes. They're probably the only organization that still uses faxes as their primary
kidding.
communication. Yep. So faxes.
So it starts off with a letter.
So you get a letter. Generally, the way it works is when you owe them money, maybe you file a tax return and you do not include a check. So you file and you have a balance. You'll get a nice little letter that says you owe money, please pay us. And then if you don't respond, then the letters get a little more aggressive. The next letters may say notice of intent to seize your tax refund, or notice of intent to seize your assets. Those are collection letters. And then if you don't respond after a while, you get the real important letter, which is the only one that has final in it. It says final notice of intent to levy and right to a hearing. That's really the only really important letter that comes in those things. That tells you that you better do something within 30 days, or they are going to levy your bank account or garnish your wages.
They shouldn't wait that long, though,
Up to
should
that
they?
point, they can't do that. They have to give you that notice.
Okay.
But many people do not pay attention to the letters. They don't open the letters. They don't go when they get a certified mail. They don't go pick it up. So, and if they do open the letters, they can't distinguish between all the other letters and that one letter I just described. That's the important one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they end up not doing anything. And then 30 days later, they get up one morning to check their bank balance, and there's no money there.
Wow.
And all these checks are bouncing, and it's a nightmare. Or they find out they're not getting a paycheck this Friday.
Right, because it's being garnished.
Yeah, and then if you let it get that far, you call somebody like myself, then you're at the mercy of the revenue officer. They're the bill collectors for the IRS. They're the ones that are out in the field collecting the money. They're called revenue officers. And, they might be on vacation. They don't pick up the phone immediately. They're not happy that you ignored them for 3 or 4 months. And they know you're in pain now because you're getting your bank account levied or your wages. So you're at their mercy in terms of how quickly they're going to jump. But so you don't want to let the moral is, or you don't want to let it get that far. You want to deal with it early. There's a way to deal with it, and there's a solution to every one of these problems, and it's best to deal with it early.
I swear.
Don't hide from it.
Yes.
Don't ignore the letters.
Because it's not going to go away.
Get good counsel and handle it.
And I'm telling you, and this is not trying to just tell people they need to go to you. Don't try to do this yourself. You could get yourself in so much trouble trying to do it yourself to save money. Because, again, I think it's so important. Once they sign with you, give you power of attorney,
Yes.
they don't have to talk to them anymore.
They do not.
They don't have to answer any letters. You take care
They're
of
not
all
going to
that.
show up at their house, which
Right.
is what some of the revenue officers will do if they haven't gotten communication from the taxpayer. So they're not going to show up at your house or business, and you don't have to deal with them. And the average taxpayer doesn't know the procedures. There's a lot of procedures in this, and they don't know what to do. They don't know if the IRS representative is taking advantage of them because they don't know what they're doing. So you're right. The best way is to get an attorney or somebody qualified in this area. Not necessarily, one of the national ones you see on the TV.
Right.
There may be some of those that,
Those are the ones that have the most negative stuff on them.
Well, they spend a lot of money on marketing, and a lot of people end up going to them because they do get to the public. But you hire a qualified person, you do some due diligence, and you hire somebody that's got some credentials and has done this before. and you get good representation, and it'll work out.
And the good representation is important. I actually had, when I started my shows about 9 years ago, I had an attorney. You probably know her name. She's was very famous. And she's taken as many cities as I can give her, and she tell me how well. She ended up going to prison.
Yeah, I know who it is.
Okay, so I don't know what happened, but all I know is it's very important. Don't just go to the phone. Don't just Google someone. That's what the purpose of the
here's
show
the
is.
problem with the national firms, okay, such as the one you were mentioning. If you hire them, you're going to be talking to somebody in a call center in Denver. For some reason, Denver is ground zero. That's where a lot of them are based. So you're going to be talking to somebody in a call center in Denver. The first person you're going to talk to on the phone is a marketing person. Not going to talk any substantive tax law with you. Not going to get down and dirty and start talking about your specific issues and how to resolve them. The conversation is going to center around broad tax situations, not your specific situation, and promises about a settlement, which before you get financial information from the taxpayer, nobody can possibly tell you the likelihood of getting some kind of settlement, because it's all numbers driven.
Right.
It's a function of the amount of income you have left over every month and your assets, and only those two things. And it doesn't have any effect on what you owe, really. So anyway, what you're going to be talking, if you hire that company, called ABC Company, you're going to be talking with somebody in Denver or San Jose or somebody over the phone.
You probably know more than
If
they
you
do.
hire, someone local like myself, you're going to come down and we're going to talk about your issue. And if you have a problem, you can knock on my door. I'm there every day, and we can resolve it. So to me, if I was in the situation, that's what I would want to do.
Right.
But for whatever reason, people do hire the national companies, and then I only hear about it when they come to me, and it usually doesn't turn out well.
Right.
For whatever reason. I'm not painting a broad stroke on everybody.
No,
but
I
that is
totally
generally
believe
my experience, is that it doesn't. But you're not going to get the one-on-one type of communication you would if you hire somebody local. So that would probably be the first recommendation. Hire somebody local rather than the national companies.
What's the time period from the first letter to the final letter?
Probably about 6 months. They send you a lot of letters.
But you don't know when that
You don't
last one's
know.
going to come.
It could be a function of how much you owe as well. But there's some time. I mean, they generally don't really expect the taxpayer to pay all of their balance at once. All the letters will say that, and they would like to get it all at once, but in the real world, it never happens. So really what the IRS is looking for is you to get into some kind of payment plan based on what you can afford to pay, and start paying your balance back and stop the bleeding. In other words, quit doing whatever you were doing before that got you in this situation, and start doing it right, which means if you're not a wage earner and you're not getting withholding, you need to start making quarterly estimated tax payments like you're self-employed. So you're not getting any taxes paid in. You have to pay your taxes yourself. So what you're supposed to do is every quarter, you're supposed to pay in some taxes towards your liability for that year. And then when you file your return on April 15, you have a nice credit to offset, and you don't owe much. You file, you pay, and you don't run up this, stop the bleeding. You don't run up these liabilities every year. And that's what they really want you to do.
Well,
Get an installment agreement to take care of the arrearage, and then do the right thing going forward.
I see someone coming to you with a problem. Everybody comes, he's got a problem. And you can almost wipe that heavy burden on your shoulder once they go with you. Because now something's going to get done. You're not going to have to, you know what you're doing. They know that you know what you're doing. And I think there's a lot of things which I want to go over, including the passport, but a lot of people don't know what the IRS can take from you.
They don't. And here's another problem. Once they file a tax lien against you, so generally the IRS files a tax lien against any taxpayer that owes over $10,000. They might not get to it for a while, but generally they file the tax return if you owe over $10,000. Once you file the tax lien, all these national companies that are out there, they pull that from the courthouse records, and then they have a tool that they get from the tax lien just has your name and address, and they'll ask for your social. So they use that to make a phone call, and so the taxpayer who's got a liability for the first time or whatever starts getting bombarded with all these calls from all these national companies, and they're telling them all sorts of things, most of which is not true, just to get their credit card and get their payment, such as we can get you a pennies on the dollar settlement.
That's the
we
one
do
you
it
hear a
every
lot.
day, but when you think about it logically, how could they possibly know that if they haven't asked you, do you have a home? Do you have equity? What assets do you have? How much income do you have? I mean, you could ask one question such as, do you have a home? And they say yes. How much equity? Yes. With those two questions, you could eliminate the offer of compromise if they wanted to.
Wow.
But they don't ask that question. So my point in saying this is that the taxpayer is going to get a lot of questions, going to be more confused because of all these people that are calling them. And so you really need to get somebody that knows what they're doing locally, usually, and let them handle it. Let them take care. Get the power of attorney signed. Let them take over the communication with the IRS and work out some kind of resolution. And that's the way to do it. And it can be done. The IRS is, they're not the nicest folks in the world, but there is a process. They do have resolution programs. They have settlement programs. And if you know the way to do it, and you get somebody competent, you work it out.
Wow.
It's there.
You make it sound so easy.
Well, I do this every day. This is all I do. So
I know.
It's not really that. You really have four options when you owe liability.
So, but I want people to know it's not just they can garnish your wages. There's a lot of things they can do.
No, generally they go after the low-hanging fruit, which is your bank account is so easy. All they got to do is send a notice to the bank.
Right.
They do have to give you that warning, the warning that says final notice to levy and right to a hearing. They have to give you that right to a hearing. So, but after that, if you miss that letter or you disregard it and you don't ask for the hearing within 30 days, they can levy you, and they don't have to go to a court or get anybody's approval. Your money in your bank account is going to be gone. And once they levy the bank account, you generally never get that money back. Because even if you work out something with them going forward and you get them so that they will not levy you again, if you ask them to give you that money back, they're going to say, no, you didn't work it out with us before. We levied you. We're going to use that money and apply it against your balance.
Gotcha.
So you'll never see it again. If it's 10 grand, 20 grand, that money's lost. Another reason why you don't want to let it get that far. You want to get it worked out before it gets to that crisis situation. Other than bank accounts, they can, of course, garnish your wages, which is embarrassing to the employee, to the taxpayer. Some people may lose their job if payroll, depending on their line of work. They're a financial advisor or something, or they're in finance, or there are a number of professions where, the management might not think too highly of you getting your wages garnished. It's an indication you're not taking care of your finances
Right.
at home. So that could be grounds for dismissal. In any event, it's embarrassing, and you're not going to get a paycheck. And the payroll looks up at a chart on the wall and says, okay, he gets paid every 2 weeks. The chart says we can leave him with $150 or $195. Doesn't matter how much they make. It's what we can leave him with.
Right.
And it's a very small sum.
I'm sure.
And basically, then you're scrambling to get somebody hired to stop it before the next paycheck. Well, the next payroll is going to go in about 5 days. You get paid every 2 weeks. So you're probably going to miss another one because, like I said, a revenue officer might not jump as soon as you call them.
Right.
They want to teach you a lesson, right? You've been ignoring them. So you just don't want to let it get that far. But yes, they can take your garnish your wages, take your bank account. Those are the two biggest things they do.
Can they take your automobile?
They can, but they generally do not.
Okay.
They're not in the business of storing cars, selling cars. I guess that if the statute of limitations was about to run out, they have 10 years to collect the tax. It starts when the tax is assessed.
Okay.
So generally when you file a return, they assess the tax, they accept the return if you mail it in or whatever electronically, they process it, they have it assessed within 30 days, and your liability hits the IRS system. That's when the 10 years starts.
Okay.
And generally after 10 years, if they haven't collected that tax for that particular tax year, it's gone. They can no longer collect it. However, there are certain things that if you do during that 10-year period, the statute of limitations stops or gets tolled. So things like if you file bankruptcy and it stays open a year, that statute of limitations is going to stop for that year. So now you've extended the period the IRS can collect from 10 to 11 years.
Got it.
If you ask for a hearing, it'll stop. If you ask for an installment agreement during the time you're trying to negotiate how much you're going to pay,
But the average
it will
person
stop.
doesn't know this, though.
No, but so it's 10 years from the time you file. And so if it gets down to the end of the 10 years and they realize they're running out of time and they only have 6 months left, that's when they'll look at other assets other than bank accounts and garnishment. They look at those early. And they generally, late in the game, if they're about to run out of time, they'll start looking at IRAs, 401ks, and maybe cars. If someone had collector cars or something like that had some value, they would look at those kind of things and they would try to seize them because they're getting ready to run out of time.
Right.
And once the 10 years is up, they can't collect.
Gotcha.
And they get a signal, a bell rings when it gets within a certain time, and they usually send it out in the field to a revenue officer if it's not already out there. And that's when they get serious about other assets.
So we're sitting here with Attorney Michael Miller. Give everybody your phone number and your website address.
Yeah, it's 561-313-5678, and website www.palmbeachcountytaxattorney.com. Again, 561-313-5678.
And we were talking about passports just a minute ago. I didn't realize what
Yeah,
they could do
that's
with a
something
passport.
new that started this year in January. So a few years ago, federal law was passed, and part of this law, kind of buried in it, was the ability of the IRS to start suspending renewals of passports and canceling passports for delinquent tax debt. Okay, so it happened in about 15, but the IRS didn't get around to really putting it in place until January of this year.
Took
So-
them that long?
Yes.
Figures?
So the way it works is they've established the bright line for what tax debts are considered so delinquent that they should result in, taking your passport or whatever. They've established the line in the sand as 50,000. So once a taxpayer owes more than 50,000 and they're not in some kind of resolution program, such as an installment agreement, or they haven't reached an offering compromise settlement or something like that, they certify that debt to the State Department. And they send a notice to the taxpayer that we've certified your tax debt as seriously delinquent. And they send it to the State Department, and at that point, the State Department can take action on the passport. They can deny any renewal. After 10 years, you come up and you want to renew your passport, and you're on that list, they'll deny it. They can deny any new application for someone who's never had a passport but now decides they want to do it. And if they're on the list, they won't get it. And
Wow.
they can suspend, terminate, cancel existing passports. Although my understanding is they're not taking that last step right now, but the policy could change.
Exactly.
And then there are rules in place if you're overseas and that happens. There are rules, you get emergency paperwork to get back and that kind of thing. Or if you need to go overseas or come back for emergency medical, there are rules in place. But I've seen, some of the notices, so they are doing it. I'm surprised how fast they started doing it, but they are doing it. And there's ways to make it go away. You come to me and we'll work out a resolution. And after we work out the resolution, such as an offering compromise or an installment agreement, you get to the right people at the IRS and they will cancel it. And they'll notify the State Department and they'll reverse it. And then you're out of the woods as far as your passport. But it's something that it's another arsenal, another weapon in their arsenal.
And I want people to know you might have a cousin or a brother or sister in another state that is having a problem with the IRS. You can handle that because it's federal.
Yeah, it's federal
You
tax
can handle
law.
anybody. Doesn't matter
So-
where they live.
All I need is a power of attorney signed. You don't need an original. So if somebody's out of state, they sign the power of attorney, they scan it and email it to me, and I fax it to the IRS, get on the phone with them, and I'm working on their matter right there. That's all that's involved.
Now, they can either call you or make an appointment to that first sit down.
Yeah, if they're local, the easiest way is to come in and have a sit down. Generally, on the first call, I would kind of get a lay of the land, what's going on, see if I can help them.
And be honest, too.
Yeah, I mean,
Be honest.
see if it's a good fit for both of us, and then if it merits going further, I come in and they bring their documentation so I can get a little better feel for what's going on, and then we move forward from there. Or if it's someone that's out of the area and that happens, it's too far to drive, then I just have them fax me the information, and if we decide to move forward, then we do the power of attorney deal, and they sign it, send it to me, and then I'm ready to go. So basically how it works is, I call the IRS up and they won't talk to me until I have a valid power of attorney
Right.
authorizing me to represent that person. And once I have that authority, and they don't need an original, it's all based on a copy, they basically ready to work with me. And so I work with them and, get a resolution of the problem.
Wow. So tell me why I should come to you.
Well, I mean,
That's always the last question at the end of the show.
You're going to get an honest person. You're going to get somebody who knows what they're doing. I've been doing this
You're
for
an attorney.
30 years. You can check you can check the reviews. You get a lot of good reviews on there, and you're going to get top-notch representation. No games played. I don't
can tell.
I don't bill people by the month. I generally figure out what I'm going to do. I have a schedule of fees, and I based on what I'm going to do, I add up the fees and I say, this is what it's going to cost. It's usually a fixed fee.
Mm-hmm.
If it takes me longer to do it, because the IRS denies it and I have to appeal, or for some other reason it drags on, it's on my nickel. I never
Okay.
asked more money, never have. Okay, so that's not always the practice out there. A lot of people will, nickel and dime you. I want a little in here, so I, fair with the fees, get good results. Can't guarantee. Nobody in this business can
No,
guarantee.
there's no way.
Especially on the offer and compromise. But I generally do not send them out unless I'm pretty sure that it's going to get accepted or we're going to get some kind of deal. Maybe a little bit of
And
negotiation
you've
at
done
the
so
end.
many of these. I mean,
Well,
this
yeah,
is,
I mean, you do
this
you
isn't
deal in
your
this
first
practice area.
rodeo.
You're kind of doing the same thing every day. Different facts, different
Right.
circumstances, different amounts. Some are harder than others, but the same drill. And a lot of times you're dealing with the same people. The local revenue officers, you're dealing with the same officers.
but you're dealing for the first time with the person, the attorney that's going to handle your case. And like you said, it's not
Yeah,
like
there's
someone.
a lot of people they can hire. People can hire. Okay, you got the ones that advertise on TV. I'm not going to give any names, but they're out there. And
Give everybody your phone number. We're almost at the end.
561-313-5678.